I'm not like, oh, well, I'm supposed to be in dad mode and now I'm encroaching on my dad mode life because I'm doing work while I'm in dad mode. I'm like, nope, I'm all the same person. And like, I'm able to like be there and support him and cheer for him and do all that stuff, but also get an hour and a half worth of, work done, which, can make it a little easier for me to leave early to go pick him up at camp and take him to the places or whatever.
Welcome to Startup Dad, the podcast where we dive deep into the lives of dads who are also leaders in the world of startups and business. I'm your host, Adam Fishman. In today's episode, I'm joined by Adam Lieb. He's the founder and CEO of Gamesight, which builds marketing tools and services for gaming companies. He's a serial founder who started his first company when he was only 11 years old. He's also a husband and the father of twins. We talked about the unique aspects of having twins, why he doesn't believe in dad mode versus work mode, advice he'd give to his younger self, and why his work and parenting mantra is simple and effective. Show up every day and try hard. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to Startup Dad on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. I hope you enjoy today's conversation with Adam Lieb. Welcome, Adam Lieb, to Startup Dad. Adam, super excited to have you here today. Thank you for joining me.
Happy to be here.
You were introduced to me by my first ever Startup Dad guest, Nick Soman. So special shout out to Nick, who I think you know from the startup community. Yes, let's wave. Hello, Nick.
Hey, Nick.
And Nick, over 100 episodes ago, over 2 years ago, it's been a long journey here on Startup Dad. So thank you,
What
Nick.
episode are we on? What is this?
Ooh, great question. I think that you are, I can check live in real time. That's what we do. You're episode 113.
Ooh, lucky 13.
Yeah, lucky 113. Cool. Well, hey, let's jump into it. You've got a cool background. Would it be safe to say that you are relatively into gaming?
Safe to say.
Okay. So you are the founder of a gaming company. Tell me what Gamesight does. It's kind of interesting. I'm not super dialed into the video game world, so.
Sure. Yeah. So it's interesting because Gamesight is a video game marketing company, technology services for video game companies. So we don't make video games, but we work with hundreds of companies that do. So it's, for people like me who love gaming and love the industry, it's awesome because we get to be a part of so much, but we also don't have the incredible burden of trying to build and launch a video game, which are, when you think about entertainment mediums in the world, they are the most prevalent. There are more people spend time engaging with video games than TV and movies and anything else. So it's the current, entertainment du jour of the world, and glad to be a part of it without having to actually build the games.
Yeah, you don't have to be part of the cycle of launching and publishing and promoting and.
We do a lot of the promoting part, which is nice. We get to deal with the stuff at the end, but the years and years it takes building games, which can be really challenging, right? Because you set out to build something that maybe takes 3 or 4 years. You have to be right that the world doesn't change, or some games, or Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out next year. You're talking about a game that's been developed for 9 years. What if you start building a game and then all of a sudden no one plays games like that anymore? No one plays games on the platform you're building for anymore. So there's a lot of risks to building something that is really slow, to build in the scheme of the world. So yeah.
Was gaming a big part of your life growing up?
Yeah, it was. I started my first gaming related company when I was 11 years old. So I've basically been doing games related businesses for however old I am, minus 11. So, the vast majority of my life, more of my life has been spent doing this than not.
Wow.
So yeah, it's been a part of my life since early days. I mean, really, when I was a kid, I remember hearing, playing video games is such a waste of time. And I thought, oh, well, what if you made money playing video games? Well, then it can't be a waste of time. What if it's your job? And, 20 whatever years later, I was right.
Yeah.
Gaming is paid for my house and my car and my, everything that I own comes from gaming and ownership.
What was the thing that you started when you were 11?
Yeah, it's funny. You think about it now. I don't, was it a company? It was a website. It was a gaming website that I started with a friend of mine. It grew pretty big. Actually, a big company actually bought it from us. So, it ended up being turning into something fairly commercial. But, it started out just as a kind of passion project hobby, building a website that did basically guides on how to beat video games. This was earlier internet days, so there wasn't, Twitch streams and YouTube videos telling you how to do things. They were text handwritten guides that I would write on how to get all the stars in Mario and things like that. And that was pretty popular.
Amazing. I probably came across that at some point back in the day. So
Yeah, if you were playing N64 trying to figure out how to beat various video games, that's what we were in the business of, helping people try to do that on AOL and GeoCities.
so 11 is very interesting because you happen to also have 11-year-old twins now, which is why you're on this pod, not just because of the good fortune of us both knowing Nick, but you're a dad. You also have a wife, Camille, who is a lawyer and works with you at your company.
Yes.
So a very important next question to you: 11-year-old twins and a wife who's a lawyer. Do you win any arguments in your household?
I mean some, but no, not a lot. No. And my daughter, I have twins, 11-year-olds, both boy and a girl. And I would say my daughter is like, I mean, she's ready for law school now at 11. My son and I are probably a little more easygoing. But my wife and I met in law school. It's funny, as I used to, fancy myself the, master of debate and negotiations and whatnot until, you get married and you're a lawyer, I guess.
Yeah. Well, and of course now you're a CEO, so there's some debate that happens probably in that job.
Yeah, fair.
You've been a founder, what I could tell is almost your entire adult life, clearly since you were 11. During that journey, you founded a few different businesses. As part of that, you met your wife, you probably started talking about having a family, and you're also founding a company. There was law school involved. Like, what was the conversation like about, let's start a family? Also, I have this other thing that is also kind of my baby, which is a company. What was that discussion like with Camille?
Oh man, it's funny. We were because my kid's birthday is actually the same birthday was 3 days ago, 4 days ago.
Wow,
it just
happy
happened.
birthday.
So we were just reflecting a little bit on this because the company, Gamesight's not much older than my kids. So for in the early days of children, we used to say that it was like running 3 startups, and it didn't sound as crazy back then as it does now. It was just sort of like, it's what I was doing. It didn't seem all that crazy. We knew we wanted to have kids. Obviously, the twins part of it was, no one plans, I don't think, you don't put that in the like, hey, let's plan to have twins. So yeah, having two definitely made it a little more complicated than I think the OG plan was. But yeah, we'd finished grad school, gotten married. We had lived in LA at the time. We could sort of, the plan for our life at the time was like, well, we're going to move back to Seattle, which back for me, my wife's from Southern California, but for me, it was moving back home. And it was really like, we thought that was the best place to start and grow this business, the sort of tech scene and gaming scene in Seattle, and the kind of family roots and stuff that I had there. It would be supportive of if and when we had kids and all that. So, I mean, that really was the plan from the beginning. And in a lot of ways, everything has just gone according to plan, except for probably the twin part. That's the one thing that we didn't, I guess, ever plan for. And, here we are 11 years later with a 11-year-old company and 2 11-year-old kids.
Wow. So your wife works with you at Gamesight. Did she start from the beginning, or is that
No.
more recent?
No. My wife, Camille was a trial lawyer for many years, and after kids, she stayed home with kids for a while. She did a lot of nonprofit work, board work at some nonprofits, and it was, man, I can't quote my dates, but I don't know, within the last 3 years, where she started working at over 2, less than 3 at Gamesight. She started part-time and quickly kind of grew to full-time, and now she runs the legal team and runs the department. So yeah, it's really cool. It was something that we never did talk about for sure, like working together. She was a trial lawyer, and working in dependency was like maybe the furthest thing from, I don't know, video games and technology. So yeah, I don't think we ever thought like, oh, seems like we both kind of do the same thing. I'm sure we'll work together at some point. It was really nothing close to that. But she's so smart and talented that it was not really all that hard for her to figure out, my work. Her figuring out how to do stuff that I do is not that hard. The other way around is much harder. But I think it's been great for her, and it's been great for me. And I get to spend a lot more time with her and see her more and talk to her more, and all that stuff is great. And yeah, working on solving problems together, which are often fun and legal in nature.
Cool. So I wanted to ask about your kids. So I don't have twins. I have a daughter who's
Smart.
Close-ish to smart. Well, it happens, but I do have 2 kids, and I've had some folks on who have had twins, and I'm curious, what is something that you think is unique about having twins that a listener who doesn't have twins might not know? Like, well, what's interesting about having twins?
Yeah, I mean, I think that like the difficulty scale is not even, right? Like there are some things that having two is like call it twice as hard, which would be the case with any two kids, right? There are some things that having two is like exponentially as hard. And like there are things like changing diapers. Changing two diapers is like very marginally harder than changing one diaper, right? Like, when you're in that mode as a parent or whatever, like who cares, right? Whether you change 4 in a day, 6 in a day, 8 in a day, it's like kind of all the same.
Right.
There's that where some people are like, oh my gosh, there's so much worse. You got to change twice as many diapers. Like, not really. And if you had two kids ever, you were changing the same amount of diapers. In fact, I think it's better to just kind of like be in that mode for however many years you're in that mode. And then you're like done with that mode rather than like, people who, you're sort of like cycling through. You're like, I'm always changing diapers for 6 years long because I've got, kids that rotated in and out. So there are things like that are like marginally harder. And then you have other things that are, sort of exponentially harder. The biggest one thinking about early days is like sleep. Imagine you have two babies. If they both sleep for 12 hours a day, but they sleep at the opposite 12 hours of the day, when do you sleep, right? You can imagine there's, time shifting problems that come with that. If they don't sleep at the same time, then you can never sleep. So things like how you manage sleep schedules of twins becomes like, I think the most important thing, if I actually think of, sometimes people say like, what's the one thing you got right? Like my co-founder is actually getting ready to have his wife's getting ready to have her first baby 2 months, 3 months from now, like coming up soon. And, so you get the questions like, oh, what's the one piece of advice you pass along? It's like sleep schedule, sleep training. Like that's like the probably number one thing we did right as parents early days. Our kids were good sleepers out of like pure self-defense. If twins don't sleep at the same time, then you're just gonna be perpetually sleep deprived. So we were really, really good about that. And, my kids 11 years later are still like really good sleepers. So yeah, I don't know, the abstract concept of things that scale exponentially versus things that scale linearly, I think is the thing about twins. And it's not always the stuff you'd expect. There are some things that, we just started our tween years. And so, the stuff that come with that, especially for us having a boy or a girl, you kind of get these different challenges at different times for, different kids.
Yeah. I'm going to put that on a t-shirt, what you said about sleep training purely a defensive strategy.
Yeah. It's a total defensive strategy, but it was a good one. I'm glad we invested heavily in that.
Yeah. So I do ask people typically on like pieces of advice that they would give, usually to the younger version of themselves, but clearly you're doing this with your co-founder who's about to have a kid. Do you think sleep is it's all about sleep? Like, is that when you talk to people about it?
I think there's a lot of things you can't control and you don't know what you can and can't when you start out. So like try not to waste too much time on the stuff that's beyond your control until you realize that it's beyond your control. And like sleep is one of the things that is, I mean, it's not perfectly, obviously babies, they're humans. They have preferences and things that work for some and don't work for others. But I think the people I know who have been like hardcore, if you will, about sleep training have had that payoff in the way that I'm not sure people who are hardcore about like feeding or food introductions or like, I think mileage varies a lot more and that kind of stuff, where I feel like sleep stuff is like close to foolproof or as close to foolproof as it gets. So I guess that's where like you can only put your effort and energy into so many places. And so like picking the ones that are going to be, you're going to kind of plant the flag on. I think that's one that I would say plant the flag on. I mean, that's advice that I think I'm good at, give, because it's like one of the things at least I know actually worked for me. I think the other thing that I often say is like, especially, a lot of people like my co-founder is a perfect example. Him and his wife are like extremely smart and extremely well read. They probably read like 50 books already on like having a kid or whatever.
Whoa.
And so I think, I mean, I'm just guessing. I don't know. He could fact check me, but I would be shocked if it's not that. They are like voracious readers. And one of the things that I remember learning at some point in the first year or whatever was like, some stuff you just have to figure out for yourself and for your kids. So like the one thing that we learned, especially with my son, maybe with both kids, was we used to, when we were getting into sleep thing, I guess, when we were getting ready to put them to bed, we used to have this, like, we were really quiet, like everything should be quiet, and then like slowly walk them upstairs to bed. And like, that didn't work as well as when, this was maybe they were closer to 1, we would start doing like going to bed song and we'd dance and we'd kind of like party. That would tucker them out enough to like then go to sleep. Yeah. And like, I think that's maybe not, I don't know that you read that in a book somewhere. Like that's definitely not what we thought the right way to do it was. We thought like, no, yeah, it's about being like calm and quiet. And like for them, that was like somehow stressful or something, that it was like too quiet and they needed the last burst of energy before they went in their cribs. So that was something where we kind of ended up doing the opposite of what maybe we thought was correct, but it was correct for us. It was correct for them.
Yeah, that is sort of a piece of counterintuitive advice, because I think most people would do exactly what you said the first time, which is like tiptoe around and like very quiet, and we're going to whisper and like all the lights are going to be low, versus, put on like Metallica
Yeah.
and dance around to Sleep Time. I don't know. Enter Sandman. There
Enter
you go.
Sandman. Yeah.
Well, that's good. Good. So we got two good pieces of advice here. Maybe do the counterintuitive things, and then
Or at least be willing to try them. I mean, I'm not saying
yeah,
always do them. Like, hey, it's everything. All conventional wisdom sucks, but I do think that being willing to like, hey, let's try this weird thing maybe that we didn't think was right and see what happens.
yeah. I want to stay on that topic because I've had a lot of guests on this show who have talked about work mode and dad mode. And a lot of people, actually, several of my recent conversations, a lot of dads have said, "Oh, I've got work dad, and then I've got work so and so, and then I've got dad mode." And I had this very clear barrier and boundary and like transition moment, and I needed to do that, and that works for me, and that's fine. I think that, again, everything works for individuals in the way that it works for them. But you don't subscribe to the work mode, dad mode thing. You told me that you're the same person everywhere. Tell me how that shows up in your life.
Yeah, I think that's something that I didn't used to do that. I definitely used to do the like, you wear different hats and you take the hat off and put the other hat on thing. And what I found was for me, that was too hard. I couldn't always make that transition. Like, the proverbial, you walk in the door and, you put the, like Dick Van Dyke or whatever, you put the hat down and the briefcase down and all of a sudden you're like not at work anymore and you're at home. That didn't work for me, I guess. So rather than, I guess, fighting against that, I've kind of gone maybe the opposite way and really just tried to like, I don't know, sound cheesy, embrace the whole me all the time. And obviously it doesn't mean I'm like actively parenting when I'm in like on a board meeting or whatever. But I do think that I definitely share a lot more about what's going on with work and some of this, my kids are older and like, I don't know, this would have made as much sense when they were really little, but I like share more of what's going on at work with my kids so they can see I'm like, I don't just like go into an office and disappear and I'm like, come back out and I'm a totally different person. Like I am the same me and I have problems just like them. I have problems with, colleagues or customers and friends and like all these things that they do. So I think that's helped me a lot. Part of it is also probably easier that my wife and I work together. So we talk about work stuff at home a lot. We tried to, when she first started working, to kind of do more like the, work mode, home mode or whatever. And like, I think we both found that frustrating. It's like, no, sometimes the thing is on the top of your mind and you're bothered about a certain thing. And so you're like, hey, let's just talk about it now rather than like queuing it up for some artificial constrained time barrier when you can talk about it. So I think that's the case. And then, kind of going the other way too, like I definitely, and, certainly the luxury of being the CEO and the luxury of working from home, which we're now, we're a fully remote company. Everybody works from home, making sure that my family life fits into my, work life. Those things, fit together. And my son is a really avid baseball player. He plays on multiple baseball teams. And I should say never. I missed like one or two of his games in the last couple of years from like a trip. I'm at like a conference in San Francisco or something. I missed a game or two. But like generally, I've been to hundreds of his baseball games because I'm able to find ways to change my work schedule around to fit into that. Or he's been playing summer ball. This is a good example. He's been playing summer ball, which is like a really casual league where they keep score, but like there's not playoffs and like it's really meant to just practice. They're at like 6 to 8 o'clock, 2 days a week. I bring my laptop and I'm able to get, an hour and a half worth of work done sort of, between his at bats and fielding plays and stuff. And I guess I don't feel guilty about that. I'm not like, oh, well, I'm supposed to be in dad mode and now I'm encroaching on my dad mode life because I'm doing work while I'm in dad mode. I'm like, nope, I'm all the same person. And like, I'm able to like be there and support him and cheer for him and do all that stuff, but also get an hour and a half worth of work done, which, can make it a little easier for me to leave early to go pick him up at camp and take him to the places or whatever, because I can still get a full day of work done. So yeah, I think it's made me not have to kind of feel maybe guilty on some of those things because I recognize that they're all trade-offs and they're all trade-offs with me, who's the same person, regardless of whether I'm at work or at home.
It happens to be kind of convenient that he plays baseball because, you're not in on every play. So, yeah. You don't have to be like dialed in. It's not like he's playing, ice hockey or soccer or something like that, where like every play is potentially he's touching the ball.
No, but baseball is also frequent. I mean, you're talking about sometimes. I mean, we'll have weeks where he'll play 4 or 5 games in a week. So like, I mean you're it's like 12 hours of the week or whatever you're at a baseball game. If you could never like send an email, it'd be tough.
That's true. Yeah, baseball loves lots of games. I don't know why that is, but it just does. The other kind of framework that I wanted to ask you about is, some of this is parenting and some of this is probably work too, but you have this framework that's very straightforward, which is to just show up every day and try. And also, I think you mentioned to me that by default, just having that mentality puts you ahead of a lot of people who don't necessarily share that same approach. Why do you think that is? Like, one, why is that your kind of go-to mantra? And then what have you observed around how that sort of sets you ahead?
It's both my same mantra for management as it is for parenting, which is like show up, be present, and try. Like if you try to be a good manager or you try to be a good parent and you show up every day with that commitment, you're definitely doing good. Are you doing perfect? Are you doing the best? Probably not, but like it at least ensures some level of competency. And I see it a lot with managers where like there is a huge difference between people who like it's my job to manage people and so I do it versus people who actually want to be a good manager. I have never seen someone who wants to be a good manager be a bad manager. Maybe it exists. I'm not saying it's impossible, but people who genuinely, like in their soul, honestly want to be good at that, they are. Because
Yeah.
so much of it, in just like parenting, so much is about being present. It's about listening. It's about showing the other person that you are there and you care. And so, do that at the base level. And I think it's sometimes people will get caught up in both parenting and management on like whether it's like books or TikTok trends or whatever it are. I'm like, these are the things I ought to be doing in like, I don't know, skills or and things like that, where like, sure, you can get better at things, but if you go to 1 out of every 5 of your kids' baseball games, but you do like a really good job of the 1 of 5, like the kid would rather just be there all the time and checking your email sometimes. Like, I think that's my just observed behavior and seeing a lot of kids and seeing a lot of parents over the years that there are parents that don't show up, that don't prioritize their kids. And like, I'm not saying they're all bad parents, but I think that if they were to swap whatever they were doing with the show up and try mentality, they would elevate themselves to be a better parent. So
Yeah.
to me, that's the baseline. And like I said, I use it in management discussions a lot. I think it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah. I want to come back to the work mode, dad mode thing for a second. You talk a decent amount about, work, probably around the dinner table. Your wife works with you. Like, sometimes you just got to have those discussions. Now that your kids are older, what kind of questions do they ask you about work? Like at the dinner table, for example, or when you all are doing something, or like how do they contribute to the work discussion?
I mean, they always want to know about game stuff, what games we're working on. I mean, we work on a lot of games that, they play or have played or their friends play. So like there's a lot of that, like really, I don't know, obvious stuff of like, hey, what are you working on this game? Is there a new update to this game coming out? And it's like cool to be able to talk about it and share that with them. I would say that the management stuff is actually probably the thing that comes up the most. I mean, my kids grown up around the company, especially my daughter is really like tuned in. I don't know that she knows everybody who works at Gamesight, but she knows dozens of them. And so she asks about people a lot and how they're doing and how they're doing at their job, or when she hears about people getting promoted or someone leaves the company or someone has to get let go, like she's like really tuned into the people parts of it a lot. And so we'll talk a lot about that and, kind of what that means, what different jobs are, different responsibilities. I think that's one of the things that I never had a concept as a kid of like, what do you do at a job? Like you'd hear like what jobs were, but like, you go to work every day and like you like what the hell actually goes on there. And so I think that's something that I try to demystify a little bit of like, I mean, kids ask a lot. I'm on a call late or early and they'll say, Dad, who's the call with? And like, I just tell them rather than, oh, Dad, it's a work call or whatever. I'm doing a one-on-one with, I meet with everyone on my team who reports to me once a week. And this is the stuff we talk about. I mean, I just kind of tell them what I'm doing to hopefully de-blur a little bit of like what my job is. So that hopefully they have some empathy for it. And, certainly hopefully they grow up with a better understanding of like, what a job is. Although maybe a job will be different enough by the time they get one that what they learned from you will be relevant. Who knows?
I'm sure there'll be something that's worthwhile there. I mean, maybe your daughter is demonstrating herself as a future really good manager, right? By checking in on all these people things. And
maybe she's definitely extremely empathetic, to thinking about what other people think about and feel. So yeah, I could totally see that.
Okay. So I wanted to ask you about like before your kids were born. So this is about 11 years ago now, and you were a founder of a different company back then.
Mm-hmm.
You did other stuff. How is founder Adam different now than when you were in your last company before your kids were born? Like, what would you say has changed since you become a dad beyond just sort of maturity and growing up and being more of an adult, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know that I have a great thought to that. Maybe this is just growing up and being an adult, but so much of it is learning by making mistakes. Like I think a lot of the stuff that is the most core to my beliefs about running a company or hiring people or whatever those things are, have come from sort of like painful learnings that I don't think go back in time and like, oh, had I just listened to someone or met someone who said, "Hey, Adam, did you know this was a thing that I would like?" I could have heard it. It's not like most of these things aren't these like totally off the wall. Like, how could anyone ever think that or whatever? Like, maybe the philosophy on like showing up and being present or whatever. Like, I didn't think that 10 years ago, or I don't know, 11 years ago, everyone was definitely didn't think that back then. But I don't know that someone telling me that would have been like, "Oh, cool. That makes total sense. I'm just going to adopt that as my life philosophy or whatever." I think so much of that, comes through like pain, and it doesn't always have to be your own. And I do really appreciate, and that's why I think podcasts like yours are really great, because hearing, if you can skip the pain by hearing someone else's pain, I think that can be helpful. But I think sometimes, you just hear the nugget or the advice, and it's like hard to know whether that applies to you or whatever. So going through those, or seeing, and, having friends like Nick who've, run multiple companies and are, 10 plus year friendship, you get to see the mistakes he's made and the pain that he's gone through. And I can look and go, geez, I know Nick screwed that up, and he told me not to screw that up too. So I won't screw that up. That has been really, really, really helpful. Maybe that's just growing up and maturing, and I've just, broken down in detail what that actually means. I don't know.
Well, some of it I think is just life experience and, stumbling and things like that. I think that's great. When you think about painful lessons, maybe not always painful, but like, what's a mistake that you think you've made maybe as a dad, or something that you would do differently next time?
That's a tough one, because I feel like I screw, especially at this age. I feel like I can't do anything right. No, I mean, one that I can think of with my son is like, coaching is really hard. Like, I've coached his football team, his flag football team. I've coached, I think, 4 years, and that's something where, in that context, it's worked out okay. Like, he's okay with me being coach. I think I have screwed up with baseball sometimes, because I've tried to coach him and help him in ways that he sometimes just wants me to be his dad and not want me to be his coach. And so sometimes he strikes out on a bad call, and he wants me, or what he thinks is a bad call, and he wants me to say, "Yeah, you got screwed," not, "You could have still hit that. If you only opened up your stance a little bit, you would have been able to hit the high outside ball," or whatever. And one is sort of, I think, a helpful coaching point, and then the other is just being a supportive dad and figuring out how to kind of go back and forth between those things. Because sometimes he does, "Dad, what can I do to make sure that I hit this ball better," or whatever. And so sometimes he does want the help. But I think that's really figuring out how to be who your kids need you to be, not who they want you to be, is a really, really tough one, because, at least at my kids' age, they're good at telling you stuff, but they're not always right into what they actually need.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. That's a really good insight there. Buried in there is this idea of figuring out what your kids really need or want from you, and like how to separate that. And, sometimes your kid just wants you to commiserate with how much of a bum that umpire is. And the
Often.
other time, the other time they want to know how to, lay down that bunt along the third baseline. But mostly it's the bum of the umpire.
Yeah, more often than not, that's what they're looking for. But, you don't want your kids to grow up with this, the world is against them victim mindset or whatever. Right. And so trying to show them that, look, there are always going to be bum umpires. And so, if we're only good at baseball when every call is right, then baseball's probably not really good at baseball. We have to be able to be good at baseball when sometimes the calls go against us. But finding out when's the right time to have that conversation versus the just, bad bum or bad call, is really tough. And I am a very honest, direct, and sort of blunt person. So I think for me, it's harder sometimes to put that or sometimes I'm like, "Dude, I recorded, I can show you, it was a strike. I've got the video on my camera. It's definitely a strike. I don't know what you want from me," but he's like, "Well, I just wanted you to say it was a bad call." Okay.
Say it in the moment, and then you can revisit that later.
Yeah, we'll watch the video. We'll go to the tape later.
Well, this kind of fits nicely with the thing that I wanted to ask you next. Is back to this idea of winning or never winning arguments in your household, or very rarely, maybe on the baseball field too. I always ask folks, what's an area of parenting that them and their spouse had to resolve your differences on as you were raising kids together? So where's an area that you and your wife were maybe at different ends of philosophy on?
I think something that maybe we started, and this has been a long time, but I think we kind of started on a different place and have maybe come to the same place, is are you your kids' friends, or are you just their parents? And I think I started out with more of I want to be their best friends. I want to be their buddies. I want them to be able to confide in me and all that. And I think that, and it's still true, I still want them to be friendly with me, and I want them to trust me, and all those things. But I think we have sort of learned that the most important role is the role as a parent, and that does come sometimes at the cost of your kids liking you, because you have to do things for them that they don't agree with. They want more cookies or whatever, and you know that really they should only have one cookie. And so finding ways to not let those things bleed, and maybe that's just early parenting and like, oh, I can imagine when my kid's 16, I hopefully, like I take my son and I go to almost every single Seahawks football game together. And I love that part of our relationship, but it is still like a father-son thing. It's not like a two buddies thing.
Right.
And when we started out having kids, I thought like, oh, I can't wait till, I got a buddy to go to football games with. And that's not true. It's still father-son football games now. And so I've kind of come around to that viewpoint of, kind of the relationship with kids.
Yeah. Awesome. It sounds like your son plays a lot of sports. Do your kids play video games too? I imagine they do.
Yeah, they do. They play different games. They're both relatively busy kids. They don't get a ton of, sort of video game time, but they do. And they both like, since they were young, and they both love it. And I think it's, important to me that they play lots of games and they don't get sort of pigeonholed into one. I certainly have I think I have more conservative views on video games than a lot of like my peer parents who don't work in video games. Like, my kids don't play games with guns in them, for example, which a lot of kids do at their age. That's something I'm like, there's plenty of time for violent video games. Like, we don't need to start super young on that. Also, definitely more conservative than most sort of peer parents on just like monetization, aggressive, monetizations that are, trying to sell them lots of stuff and buy skins and all of these things. I try to have them stick to games where those are not how the games make money, because I'm, I guess, painfully aware of how those games make money. And I think that's fine for adults. I think that's not great for kids and kids' brains.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. And I probably could have figured that out about you, but I actually had thought maybe the opposite would be true, that because you are so into the world of video games or gaming, that maybe you had more of a laissez-faire approach. But I guess the opposite makes sense. You know how the industry works, and so it might make you a little bit more apprehensive of
Yeah, that's probably the case. I mean, just, depending on what we're talking about. I mean, there's so much, and it was definitely true for me as a kid too. There's so much about video games that are good for development. They're good for teamwork and communication. They're good for reading and problem solving and storytelling and like all of those, creativity, all these types of things. But like, video games are just so big, and there's so many different types. Like, it's almost unfair as a medium that we just like call everything a video game, right? Because it's just so different. I mean, in books are, I guess, the same way. It's like books are not like all good or all bad. There's books that are trash and bad for you, and there's books that are super educational, and there's ones that are age appropriate and not. I mean, it's like the same thing. So yeah, I would say, lucky for them, I'm like thoughtful and tuned into all of that stuff. But I mean, they have access to, we've got every video game console and pretty much every, game that's available they have access to. So that is nice. But yeah, I'm definitely a little more restrictive, I would say, than a lot of their peers.
And how do you go about like setting those limits? So obviously you mentioned, hey, we don't play games with like excessive violence or guns or things like that. We try to avoid games that have monetization via getting you to buy stuff all the time and that sort of thing. But like, how have you talked to your kids about this? Like, how do you kind of explain to them this universe and how they should navigate it?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, that's definitely part of my parenting philosophy, as it is with some of the other stuff we talked about. We just talk about that exactly. I say there are games with guns where you're going around shooting people, and you're 10 years old, 11 now. You're 11 years old. Like, I don't think it's good for you, and here's the reasons why. And like someday, if it says right on the box, 17 plus, you're not 17. So like, these games are not built for kids like you.
Yeah.
We've definitely talked about, and I think they've seen with some of their peers. I mean, this is, sometimes you feel vindicated as a parent because, you sort of teach your kids something and then they kind of like see it in the wild and like, oh yeah, mom and dad were right about that. We've talked about the, kind of like just the addictive nature of free to play mobile games basically, and how they're really built to, trigger dopamine hits in your brain so that you'll pick up the device over and over and play and spend money and all that. And it talks about how like brains are super susceptible to that. Your brains aren't fully formed. It would be a bigger problem for you than for an adult. And they've seen it happen to some of their friends who, the kids call it brain rot, right? Where the kids are like, become screen monsters and junkies. And we've talked about that since they're pretty young, and think they've seen it happen now to some of their peers and are like, whew, I'm glad that's not me. So yeah, we've had candid conversations from probably too young for them to understand it, but then at the point when it starts to matter, they've, been primed a little. So yeah, those are always just honest conversations. Kids can listen to this podcast and hear me say the same thing as I say to them in private.
Well, I'm sure that they will rush to listen to this pod as soon as it's out.
Oh, I told them both today. They both, because my kids ask me often, like, oh, what do you do at work today? And I'll tell them, oh, I'm doing this or that. And today I said, oh, I'm on a podcast about dads. Any dad stories that you have that you should want me to bring up or whatever. So they both know. So my guess is when I see them both at some point today, they'll ask me how it went.
Yeah. Did they have any stories for you that they were like, Dad, you got to talk about
Yeah, my
this?
daughter had one, which she of course would. It's like a medium embarrassing story for me, so that's why she, of course, thought it'd be funny for me to bring up. It was maybe 2, 3 years ago, relatively recently. I took her to I don't know exactly what it is, but it's like an adventure kind of park, and there's like
Yeah.
trampolines and swings, and like I don't know, it's like a fun place to like run around and do stuff. And they had, if you've ever watched American Ninja Warrior, they have like at the very end of American Ninja Warrior, you have to like run up this ramp. It's like they're called the vert ramp.
Yes.
So they have those types of things there. And so we were playing, having fun. She said, Dad, I bet you couldn't go up that. I was like, I could definitely go up that. It was not definitely the big one they have in American Ninja Warrior. It was a smaller one. It was, I don't know, 10 feet tall or whatever. I was like, I definitely could do that, no problem. And so we go over there. I run up to the top easily, first try. I'm, laughing. And then I sort of slide down to get down. As I get to the bottom where the vert ramp like meets the floor, there's like a connector, and it was, I guess, lifted up off the ground. My foot got stuck and ripped my toe in half. My pinky toe got broken in half. I had a compound fracture, the bone sticking out of the side of the toe.
Oh my God.
Blood everywhere. And she thinks that's a very funny story. So I, had to get it reset, and I had a cast on my leg for 6 weeks or something. She got VIP passes to come back whenever she wants.
Because Dad got an injury.
Yes.
That's
to not sue. Don't sue us. Which,
wow.
So she thinks that's really funny. And then the capper on the whole story was, it was like 2 weeks before we were going to Disneyland. So I had to go to Disneyland I could walk with like the boot, but I couldn't walk Disneyland walking. So I had to use like a cart at Disneyland. And my daughter thought that was the funniest thing in the world.
But here's the real important question. Did that get you the front of the line passes? Yes. You got to skip the line at Disney.
But they I got like no credit for that. They weren't like, oh, Dad, what a great, thing we got to do that. It was like, haha. Like they were still, again, I could like hobble around, but like you're Disneyland, you're talking about walking miles and miles. And then the other thing which my wife was really scared about was, because of the way that it was in the boot, like in your waiting line, if someone like, bumps into it, kicks it, she's like, it's going to explode or whatever. You can't do that. So it was safer to do the scooter. But
that sounds
lots
terrible.
of pictures of me in the scooter at Disneyland for, I don't know what purpose, but they have those pictures.
Memories. Those are going to show up at the weddings, at prom, all.
Well, I'm already married.
Yeah. Well, your kids' weddings.
They're going to have pictures of me I don't know. Well, luckily I'll save pictures of them for, we do that every now and then. My wife will joke about that show. We'll take a picture of the kids, and, I don't know. They don't want to take a picture of their powder or something. She's like, oh, perfect. We'll use that in your wedding video.
Right. Totally. Oh, I have so many I've been to one of these American Ninja Warrior type places.
Okay.
And so I'm very familiar. That sounds so painful. And like through the shoe and everything,
what was crazy is I didn't really know what happened. I knew it hurt and I was in pain. And then like, I looked at my sock, and all of a sudden it's like pooling blood, but like the sock is on. I'm not going to like take it off. So I literally had no idea what was going on. I thought maybe the toenail had ripped off. It's probably getting more graphic than your average podcast, but like, I really had no idea what I was dealing with. And then I drove to the hospital, which I probably shouldn't, maybe I shouldn't have, but it was kind of far from home. Like it's usually, they're like kind of out of ways. So we're like, I don't know, 45, 50 minutes or so from like home and the hospital. So yeah, I just like, let's get in the car and cut it short.
What an adventure. The sacrifices that dads make for their kids,
They did give her two. They, like those AC Slurpee things, they gave her like, while I was like, because like they have like medical people, someone came over and was like trying to be helpful. And then in the meantime, they gave her like a double XL blue slushy Slurpee thing for the car ride. So yeah, she was happy.
Wow. Like, quick, let's placate this kid. You're like, what about me?
Well, she's, and I think her first, when they walked over, she said, oh, I think my dad got hurt and I'm very litigious. So like she sets it up.
That's amazing. Okay. I have a couple more questions for you. So we talked about video games. When you think about overall the relationship you want your kids to have with technology as they get older, and they're getting into that kind of sweet spot age, right? Where people start talking about cell phones and like unfettered access to the internet and YouTube and all that sort of stuff. How do you think about, or how's it come up in your house around the relationship that you and your wife want the kids to have with tech as they get older?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for us has been communicate. Like these are been active conversations for probably 5 years in our house. So it's not like a new concept that they're having to deal with. Yeah, I mean, my son just got for his birthday, but he just got a computer, which he needs. He's starting at his new school. You have to have a computer
Yeah.
that you bring every day. And so like he has his first computer that he has, I don't know, like now I wouldn't say unfettered access, but it's like it's his computer. And so starting to talk about, well, what does that mean versus, last year maybe you'd use the school at the computer or the computer at the school. And like that's sort of a different thing than personal devices. So yeah, I think for us it's that being a conversation for a long time such that they're not surprised about it. They understand, which is definitely something I didn't at their age, understand that like there are things that aren't appropriate for them and there are things that are for older kids, and that it's not bad that you can't do this now. It's one day you'll be able to. Well, some things hopefully never do, but like generally speaking, there's a lot of stuff that's just not age appropriate. And I think just even having that concept of age appropriate and what's good for me and what's good for my brain and good for my development. Does it mean they will always make perfect choices? Obviously not, but at least that framework I think is built in for them that they know. And that's also, I mean, it constantly changes, right? Like what was, again, for my son, he's going to have, starting next year, he's going to have daily homework on a computer. That's new. He needs access to that in a way that he hasn't before. And so we're going to have to work with him on what are ways to have appropriate limitations. How do we not just check baseball scores the whole time we're supposed to be doing our math homework? Like that is going to be a problem for him. I know it is, but learning how to deal with that. So it's just through lots of conversations.
Yeah. It was a much simpler time when I was a kid, and the only way to use a computer was you had to put in a disk into it, and that was how you did anything.
Yeah, but I remember, like, in a lot of ways, it's crazy because, well, there's so much more, access to things now. Like when I first got on AOL, the idea of kids having limits and stuff like that was
no parental controls.
No one talked about that. No one thought about that. I don't think. It's like totally novel concept. The bounds of the sort of trouble you could get in on the internet back then, I don't think people really knew what was what was available versus now. It's a little more well tread.
Yeah, it was like the wild, wild west with no restrictions. So
yeah.
Two more for you. I don't know if AI has found its way into your household yet. Probably has found its way into your professional life. But what's the most creative use of AI that you've found as a parent, or are there any interesting ways you're exploring it with your kids?
Yeah, we use a lot of AI. I think a lot of it is me trying to get them to be, I would say, like AI native in a way that I'm not and you're not, because we're adults when this sort of technology was invented. And I think the first thing that was really novel to me was Alexa, right? Like the idea that there's this little circular thing that lives in your kitchen or living room, wherever, that when you have a question about something in the world, you just say it out loud and you get an answer. Like that is something that is not intuitive. And for me, that's not obviously how I grew up. That's not how the world works. You didn't just say questions out loud and expect answers to appear. But for my kids, they've had an Alexa almost their entire life. And so watching them, I don't know, the problems they solve, like the types of things they think to use Alexa for intuitively and natively are just way better than what adults would do. So I think the same thought has been the case. Obviously that is, on a sort of an AI thing, but like we were talking about things like chatbots, it's just sort of the same concept. So we use it for all sorts of stuff. Really simple examples are my kids, whenever they're reading books, they'll usually use a chatbot to ask them questions about it for like comprehension and I don't know, sometimes for fun, but usually it's for comprehension. I say like, I'm an 11-year-old reading this book for school. What are, give me 5 questions and they'll answer those, which I think is just a more fun way to do it than if they had a piece of paper with 5 questions on it and had to write answers. It would feel more like homework than talking with the thing. So that's probably the most basic one. Some of the more advanced ones is both my kids are using AI to build different simple websites for things. Like my son has one for baseball card collection. He has one that he's built for his sort of a baseball, but it's called Baseball Buddy, and it keeps track of his baseball stats. It syncs with his baseball stats from an app, and then also gives him like tips and recommendations of like training and what to practice.
Wow!
But he built the web, the whole web app with, he does not code, but the tool he uses does it for him. And then my daughter did, and I did a fun one. My son and wife were out of town for like a week. They went somewhere together, and so her and I made like a tires schedule for the 5 days they were gone, and what dad was making for dinner and what snacks she was going to have, what her after school activities were. It was just sort of like visual countdown timer to when they all got home, had a bunch of her goals for the week, taking the dog for a walk and all that kind of stuff. So it was cool. And I think they really find it pretty novel watching a website get built. You type in a few prompts and then, widgets start changing, colors change, new boxes appear. I think they really like that and find that novel. So I think for me, it's mostly just trying to have it feel like a part of their life, such that as the technology grows, they're growing with it and not like learning to adopt it as an adult. And so, yeah, we'll see. Schools are really wrestling with it. So
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to see. I have orientation at one of my kids' schools next week, and it's like one of my biggest questions is, that book report thing is a great example of like, he's supposed to read some books over the summer, and then it's not exactly a book report, but it's like, there's some stuff they want him to come prepared with. It's like, okay, if you just said, here's the question my teacher asked, give me the answer, that seems like cheating. Seems like you probably shouldn't do that. If it's, hey, I read this book and here are the insights I have, what do you think? That doesn't really feel like cheating. That seems like, helping it form your own thoughts. So like, where is that line? Is that a line you're just trusting the 10-year-old, 11-year-olds to just figure out themselves at home? I don't know. But, one, I think is a way to improve your thinking and probably, make you a better student. And one is a way to like cheat. And so I don't know how the schools, I'm glad I don't have to figure out the actual way to enforce any of that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't think anyone sorted it out just yet. Schools seem to be taking mostly a ban it outright kind of stance.
Seems so.
But I don't think that's going to be super helpful. So we'll have to see where they end up. So anyway, we will find out more on that later. Okay, last question for you, sir, before lightning round. How can people follow along or be helpful to you in your journey?
I guess I used to be pretty active on Twitter, not so much anymore. So I am the most active on LinkedIn, the adult social network. I do post real life parent stuff sometimes. I mean, I try to, in as much as it's professional. Like I wrote a medium length post that got good amount of discussion around like the baseball app my son's team uses AI to do all the game summaries, which is like a super cool use. So it'll do it almost like, if you go to ESPN and read a summary of a game, it does all that for Little League games. So, talk about AI and, parental stuff. So LinkedIn, I would say, is the best place. And, I like chatting about video games and running a business and, being a parent, in as much as it's, I guess, relevant to work.
Okay. Well, we will send everybody to LinkedIn. Maybe we'll toss some people over to your Twitter feed too. Although, like you said, I'm spending less time on that platform too these days. So, okay. Are you ready for lightning round?
I think so.
Here we go. Question number 1. What is the most indispensable parenting product that you have ever purchased?
Most recently, it's been a foldable, collapsible wagon. Baseball games, right? It's like, hey, let's throw all this stuff in the collapsible wagon. You have to walk through the fields and around the hills and all that. So a collapsible wagon.
Okay.
Fits in the car, doesn't take up a lot of space. It can fit a lot of stuff. It can even fit a kid.
Yes, I am very supportive of the collapsible wagon.
Okay.
That's a good
I'm
one.
sure there's better answers I thought longer about it, but more recently that feels like the most current indispensable thing.
That's great. We get a lot of young kid ideas. I like the middle-aged kid, ideas too.
Collapsible.
What is the most useless parenting product you've ever purchased?
Well, this is an early parent one, but this is probably the most expensive thing we ever bought that had the least amount of use. So like the most negative ROI anything we ever bought. It was a thing for feeding both babies at the same time. It was called Table for Two. No shade at this company. I'm sure they do great work, but it was called Table for Two. And it was you put both babies in at the same time and you could like feed them both bottles. And it was like, I want to say it was like French and it was fancy and it was very expensive. We like never used it once. It didn't the kids didn't fit in it right. It was like an awkward thing. It was just not how you feed twins. So that was probably, I know that's a baby thing, but that was probably our most negative ROI purchase ever.
Okay, cool. We will dissuade any twin parents from purchasing that. Sorry, Table for Two.
Sorry, Table for Two. Yeah, it's a clever name too.
Yeah, love it. They will unfortunately never be an advertiser on this podcast.
Okay,
now, so.
I think you'll survive.
I will. Okay, true or false? There's only one correct way to load the dishwasher.
True-ish. I would say there's slight variations, but there's some major things that they have to be one. They have to be one way. Yeah.
Okay.
So like mostly yes.
I imagine is this your way?
It is my way.
Okay.
I do the vast majority of the dishes in our house and have for 15 years or whatever. So like I'm definitely, which I think for what it's worth, if there one person does the majority of the thing, their way should be like that is the way. Like, and other people should have to
follow the lead.
Follow the lead.
Yeah.
I don't know why no one can. No one else can follow. I have to reload my dishwasher very frequently. This is not helpful.
I love that. Okay, what is your signature dad superpower?
Lila. My daughter was right there. I was going to ask her. See if she'd give me a good answer because I don't know that I have a good answer. I mean, I can always make them laugh, which is probably the most important. It's a little serious, but that probably is my real one.
We'll take
it. Even when they're like grumpy or fighting or whatever, I can usually get a laugh.
Okay, good. All right. What is the crazier block of time in your household? 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. or 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.?
Oh, the morning time.
Yeah. Not
The
much of a
morning time.
morning household.
No, but just in terms of like craziness, timing it seems like no matter what time everyone wakes up, no one is awake with the right amount. The time they'd prefer to get ready, people are either up too early and then they're just like waiting and annoyed that they have to wait to go to their thing or start their day, or
Yep.
they're up with not enough time. The end of the days are not as, they peter out.
Okay.
So yeah, the morning time's craziest.
All right. If your kids had to describe you in one word, what would it be?
Nerd.
What is the funniest thing that one or both of your kids have ever said in public?
My kids were really little. My kids learned maybe younger than most, like male and female body parts. Maybe because they're twins, they take baths together or whatever when they're little. Like it was like a thing that like occurred to them earlier. Right? So like talking about that. And we were at a grocery store checking out, and the cashier was, scanning the stuff. And my daughter looks at me and says, "Daddy, does he have a penis?" That probably would be the funniest thing. Yeah, yes, honey. I think so. I don't know. Actually, I don't know. But like, I think so, probably. Can we talk about this later?
Let's
Quieter.
just keep scanning and get out of here.
Yes. And then we had to stand there for like, 2 more minutes while the rest of it was done. So yeah, that was probably.
Love that. I should probably replace that with embarrassing, but
Well,
it
was definitely embarrassing.
Okay.
I'm not embarrassed usually, but that was a tough one.
Yeah. Okay.
But she was right, at least.
True. Anatomically correct. Yes.
She got the lesson.
Okay, cool. What is your go-to dad wardrobe?
I mean, I'm probably wearing it. I wear pretty much every day. You probably can't see it, but I usually wear a company t-shirt and then athleisure pants. Almost always wear short socks, but they're like colorful in some way, shape, or form. That's pretty much it. I don't, shoes if I have to, but ideally I don't wear shoes. So
they're overrated.
That's pretty much it. I can wear all that to work and then go straight to the baseball game or straight to school pickup or whatever I need.
Okay, awesome. How many parenting books do you have in your house?
Not a lot.
How many would you say you have read cover to cover?
0.
That seems to be the going answer.
0, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my guess is we have sub 5, probably between 3 and 5. I'm sure my wife's read some. I think I've read parts of some.
Okay, awesome. How many dad jokes do you tell on average in a given day?
A lot. That's definitely been something that is, come natural.
Is that ramping up as the kids get older?
I think so, because like what's funny, and maybe this is I've never really studied it, but the origin of dad jokes seems to be you tell them when they're little because they laugh. Like they're dad jokes and they're funny and they love it. And like, that's why you do it.
Right.
And then as they get older, they don't find them as funny, but then you tell them almost for that reason, because they don't find them funny, or they find it funny, but they're pretending not to laugh because they think that it's not supposed to be funny or cringe or whatever.
Yep.
So I'm probably in a middle phase now where like half of them, they still think are funny and they laugh. And then the other half like, Dad, that's a dad joke or whatever. So I assume as we go through the tween to teen years, it will go 100%. Dad, this isn't funny. Stop saying this stupid thing.
Correct.
But I'm kind of in the like, yeah, it's probably 50-50 hits where it's like a genuine laugh. Or if there's 2 of them around, I'll almost always get one of them.
Okay, good. All right. On the flip side, what is the most difficult kids TV show that you've ever had to sit through?
Yeah, it's one of the things that they transitioned younger than most kids to like decent stuff.
Okay.
That you could watch, which is good. But early days, I think it was a show on Netflix called Baby Animals. And I think it's just a bunch of animals on loop, which doesn't sound so bad. But the theme song was Baby Animals, dun, 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 Baby Animals. And they just played it over and over. And I can just hear that stupid song. I mean, I haven't probably heard it in 10 years, but it still like pings in my head.
Okay.
So that show, I would say, because of the music more than, I think it was literally just pictures of baby animals, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay. Content, okay. Music, not so okay.
Music was just 10 years later, still seeped into my brain.
All right. We're in the home stretch. What is your favorite kids movie?
See, my kids have good taste. My kids watch a lot of, my kids listen to a lot of music that I like and a lot of movies I like. So maybe one of their favorite movies, it's also one of my favorite movies, would be Happy Gilmore, which is nice. And they watch that probably younger than most, but that would be it.
Okay. And I did see, I think on your Twitter feed, you watched the second one.
Yes, we watched
it.
The whole family watched it the day it came out. So it tells you how much they liked the first one.
Yep.
And we liked it. Yeah, we liked it. A lot of the cameos are good people. I think we're definitely big Julie Bowen fans. We were sad that she was dead and wasn't in more of the movie. Spoiler alert. Yes. Sorry, I forgot. But
yes. You've just ruined it for everyone.
Well, I think the statute of limitations is run. It's it's on Netflix. It's
correct.
If you haven't seen it now, it's because you don't want to see it.
Correct. I personally was a big fan of the Eminem cameo,
Yes.
which was awesome.
My son's favorite rapper is Eminem, and
Okay.
he loved the Eminem cameo. Yes,
I
agreed.
think my son's too. What nostalgic movie, maybe besides Happy Gilmore, can you just not wait to force your kids to watch? Or maybe you've already forced them to watch it.
I've done a lot of that. I've definitely done a lot of that. I would say currently it's Lord of the Rings. Do not watch any Lord of the Rings. It's a little, I don't know, it's a little dark with the orcs and stuff, especially in like the second movie. It's like it gets a little, like, I don't know that they're quite ready for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
is the biggest one.
What is the worst experience you've ever had assembling a kid's toy or a piece of furniture?
There's definitely been a lot of them. My son has got these stools in their like, it has like the Mariners logo on like the butt of the stool.
Mhm.
And you've seen stools, right? They're metal. There's 4 things and a round cushion. There's like 65 parts to the stool. And I don't understand why there's so many parts. And he has 2 of them. We have 1 built and it's been like almost a year. So like, I don't know when I'm gonna get the second one built, but it was like it just seems so unnecessary. I think that's the thing that bothers me the most about it is like, it just doesn't have to be this. Like it could have come in 5 pieces or something, but instead it's like
together.
No, it's like 65 parts, and like I feel like there's welding involved, and like it just doesn't isn't needed. So got 1 put together and was so frustrated. The second one is still in the box.
Okay, last 2 for you. How often do you tell your kids back in my day stories?
Oh, a lot. It's definitely one of my son's biggest trolls on me. Is he'll always say, "Oh, Dad, that was like back in the day." He always everything's back in the day. To be fair, I think that I'm pretty good about trying to tell them like, this is different than it used to be. Like, I'm not just like saying that like this is how it should be because I was. I'm like, look, the world is different. It used to be like this when I was a kid. When I started 5th grade, like we didn't have computers or whatever. Like I'm saying it's different. So they still give me a lot of crap for it, to be fair, but I don't feel like I do it the same way that like, I don't know, Al Bundy or whatever the like canonical, like back in my day, like,
You don't tell stories about scoring 4 touchdowns in a single game or anything like that. That's the canonical.
I mean, I do have some football stories that I would share, but I guess it's not so much the like longing for the days of yore. Like back in the day, it used to work this way.
Yeah.
No, like my son, the most, it's music. He'd be like, "Dad, this song is really good." I'm like, "Yeah, I listened to that song when I was 20 years ago." He's like, "Oh, there's a back in the day song." I'm like, "Yeah, and you like it, so shut up."
Sounds like an 11-year-old kid. Okay, final question. Very important. What is your take on minivans?
Against? Is that the 2 choices? Pro or against, or for or against? I'm against, if that's the...
Okay. What about, is this a house divided? What is your wife's take on minivans?
Against.
Okay.
Against. We're
an aligned team.
We're aligned.
An aligned team.
I know it's currently a fight in my brother's household. He just mentioned it to me. It's he's pro, his wife is against. So
that's interesting. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear that you and your wife are fully aligned on the minivan concept. We'll have to see. Jury's out on your brother's household. So good luck to him.
I actually don't know. I don't know how it's going to shake out. I don't know that I put money on it.
They're going to end up with the new electric Volkswagen bus is what's going to happen.
And my mom would love that.
Yeah.
My mom loves that car. She's always talking about it.
All right, Adam, thank you so much for joining me today on Startup Dad. It was a pleasure having you, and happy birthday to your kids, and best of luck to you and your family and your company for the rest of this year. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to today's episode with Adam Lieb. You can subscribe and watch the show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Just visit www.startupdadpod.com to learn more and browse past episodes. Thanks for listening, and see you next week.